Alright, question 5. We've got a few crazy looking equations that we've got to solve. They're not crazy, they'll end up, we'll be solving them the same way as quadratics. But yes, it looks a bit weird. So first of all, we've got 4 to the x. Take 9 times 2 to the x plus 14 equals 0. And eventually with these, we want to end up with like ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Then we can use the quadratic formula or we can factorize. So see how this is 2 to the x here. That's my big tip, to make them all 2 to the x if I can. So for example, 4 to the x, well that's 2 squared to the x. 9 times 2 to the x, the 14 I can't do anything with. And then that's the same as 2 to the 2x. Take 9 times 2e to the x plus 14. And then that's the same as 2 to the x squared. Take 9 times 2 to the x plus 14 equals 0. Oh, sorry, just to backtrack. This was also a pretty big hint. So now I've got 2 to the x squared. Take 9 times 2 to the x plus 14 equals 0. What I can do is I can just let u equal 2 to the x. Because then I've got u squared. Sorry, I just want to highlight that. Take 9u plus 14 equals 0. And then all I'm doing is factorising this, or you could chuck it straight in the quadratic formula, you know, x equals minus b plus minus the square root of b squared. Take 4ac all over 2a, but that's kind of overkill at this point, because we know how to factorise. Two things that multiply to give positive 14, add to give negative 9. U take 7, u take 2 equals 0, so u equals 7 and u equals 2. I'm not finished yet because it wasn't u, it was 2 to the x. 2 to the x equals 7, 2 to the x equals 2. Well, obviously on this further right one, 2 to the x equals 2 to the 1, so x equals 1. But on the left one, 2 to the x equals 7. We have to take a log of both sides, so I'm going to take log base 10. 2 to the x, 7, which means I've got x times log base 10 of 2, log base 10, 7. So x is going to come out as log base 10, 7 over log base 10, 2, which I don't have my calculator with me, so I'm not going to do that now. And if you didn't have your calculator in a test, you could just leave it like that, you'd be perfectly correct. Question B is really similar, except this time they say u equals 3 to the x. So you know what we're heading towards. We've got 3 to the 2x, take 8 times 3 to the x, take 9 equals 0. So this is the same as 3 to the x squared. You don't necessarily need to write this line of working out. You can probably just go straight to the next one, because now I can just go u squared, take 8u, take 9 equals 0 if I let u equal 3 to the x. Two things that multiply to give negative 9, add to give negative 8. Well, you take 9u plus 1 equals 0, so u equals 9, u equals negative 1. And then, well, u equals 9, that means 3 to the x equals 9, 3 to the x equals negative 1. Well, this is just 3 squared, isn't it? So x equals 2. On the right, though, we've got 3 to the x equals negative 1. Is there anything, 3 times itself is never going to come out as negative 1. No solution. So they weren't too hard. I've asked you to do certain ones from C, so I've asked you to do I. I've asked you to do, this one looks like V, and this one looks like VI. So I is fairly straightforward. You can see right away that we've got a 5 to the x here, so I'm going to try and rewrite this one. And you know 25 is just 5 squared, yeah? So this is the same as 5 to the x squared. I've skipped a few steps, but you've seen them in action, you know how to do them. Take 26 times 5 to the x plus 25 equals 0. So let u equal 5 to the x. We've got u squared, take 26u plus 25 equals 0. So we've got u take 25, u take 1 equals 0. So u equals 25. and u equals 1, which means 5 to the x equals 25. 5 to the x equals 1. These are both pretty simple to solve because 5 to the x equals 5 squared, x equals 2. 5 to the x equals 5 to the 0, because remember anything to the power 0 is 1. So x equals 0. So there are two solutions. Number V, easier I think. So we've got 2 to the 2x. I'm going to rearrange it and get equals 64. This one's even easier to solve than the others. We don't need to stress too much. So this is the same as 2 to the x squared equals 64. So 2 to the x equals plus minus the square root of 64. So 2 to the x equals positive 8 and 2 to the x equals negative 8, which means 2 to the x equals 2 to the 3, x equals 3. Can 2 to the x equal negative 8? No solution. So we only have one solution for this one, and it's x equals 3. Last but not least, we've got VI, and I'd like to remind you that this is 2 to the x is 2 to the half x squared. So I'm going to write this as 2 to the half x squared. Take 3 times 2 to the half x plus 2 equals 0, which means I've got let u equal 2 to the half x. We've got u squared, take 3, u plus 2 equals 0, which means u take 2, u take 1 equals 0, u equals 2, and u equals 1, which means we've got 2 to the half x equals 2, and 2 to the half x equals 1. So this is 2 to the half x equals 2 to the 1. 2 to the half x equals 2 to the 0, which means half x equals 1, x equals 2, and half x equals 0, x equals 0. Not too bad, those ones.